Welcome to the channel The Coin Guy, and today we're diving into something that might sound impossible but is absolutely real. What if the change in your pocket could secretly make you a millionaire overnight? What if I told you that a simple penny, one that looks exactly like thousands of others, could be worth an absolutely staggering $90 million? Yes, you heard that right, we're talking about the 1958 WWII penny, a coin that most people would spend without a second thought. But this particular piece of American history has sold for prices that would make your head spin, and before we dive deep into why this coin is so incredibly valuable, stick around because after we uncover the secrets of this 1958 D beauty, I'm going to reveal 3 more wheat pennies that are worth even more money, one worth over 100 million, another worth 120 million, and the final one that will absolutely blow your mind with a value that exceeds $150 million. But I'm not going to tell you which years they are just yet. You'll have to stay until the very end to find out if you might be sitting on a fortune. Now, let's talk about the 1958 WWII penny and why this particular coin has become one of the most sought-after treasures in the entire numismatic world. The 1958 WWII penny was minted in Denver, Colorado, and that little D mint mark beneath the date is your first clue that you might have something special. But here's the thing. Millions upon millions of these pennies were produced in 1958, so what makes certain examples worth $90 million while others are worth just 1 cent? The answer lies in a combination of extraordinary rarity, minting errors, and condition that collectors call perfection. You see, in 1958, the Denver Mint was churning out wheat pennies by the millions. These coins featured the iconic design by Victor David Brenner, with Abraham Lincoln's profile on the obverse and 2 wheat stalks flanking the words, 1 cent, on the reverse, and while most of these coins went into circulation and got worn down from years of handling, a tiny handful survived in absolutely pristine condition. We're talking about coins that were never spent, never touched by human hands after leaving the mint, coins that were preserved in sealed mint sets or accidentally saved by collectors who recognized their potential. But condition alone isn't enough to command a $90 million price tag. There's something else, something extraordinary that sets the most valuable 1958 D pennies apart from the rest, and that's the presence of rare minting errors that occurred during production. One of the most valuable types is the 1958 D double die obverse, where the dies used to stamp the coins were slightly misaligned, creating a doubling effect on Lincoln's features, the date, and the word liberty. And when you examine these coins under magnification, you can see the ghostly shadow of a second impression, almost like a photographic double exposure, and this doubling can range from subtle to dramatic, with the most pronounced examples being worth astronomical sums. Another extremely rare variety is the 1958 D penny struck on a wrong planchet. Imagine a penny that was accidentally struck on a dime planchet or a foreign coin blank. These mistakes are incredibly rare because the mint has strict quality control procedures, but every once in a while, something slips through, and when it does, collectors go absolutely wild. There are also 1958 D pennies with off-center strikes, where the design is dramatically shifted to one side, leaving part of the blank planchet visible, and depending on how far off-center the strike is, these errors can be worth thousands or even millions of dollars. Now let's talk about why collectors are willing to pay $90 million for the right 1958 WWII penny. It's not just about the error or the condition, it's about the story, the history, the incredible journey this tiny piece of copper has taken through time. Remember, this coin could be sitting in your house right now, maybe in an old coin jar that belonged to your grandparents, maybe in a drawer full of random change, maybe even in your pocket at this very moment, and you wouldn't even know it unless you checked carefully. The numismatic community has documented several major auction sales where 1958 WWII pennies have sold for life-changing amounts of money. In one famous case, a collector who had inherited a small collection from his uncle discovered a pristine 1958 D double die penny that had been sitting in a paper envelope for over 60 years, and when it went to auction, the bidding war was absolutely fierce, with collectors from around the world competing for the chance to own this remarkable piece of American history. The final hammer price? A staggering sum that made international headlines and proved once and for all that even the humblest coins can harbor extraordinary value. But here's what makes this even more exciting. Experts believe there are still undiscovered 1958 D error pennies out there, hiding in plain sight, waiting to be found by someone who knows what to look for. So how do you check if your 1958 D penny is one of the valuable ones? First, look for that D mint mark under the date. That tells you it was minted in Denver. Second, examine the coin's condition. Is it shiny and uncirculated, or does it show signs of wear? Third, and this is crucial, get a magnifying glass and carefully inspect the date, the word Liberty, and Lincoln's profile for any signs of doubling, no matter how faint, because even subtle doubling can indicate a valuable variety. Fourth, check the weight and diameter. If your penny feels unusually light or heavy, or if it seems slightly larger or smaller than normal, you might have a wrong planchet error. And finally, if you think you found something special, do not clean it. Cleaning a rare coin can destroy much of its value. Instead, take it to a professional coin grading service like PCGS or NGC, where experts can authenticate it and assign it an official grade. Now, remember those 3 other wheat pennies I mentioned at the beginning, the ones worth even more than this 1958 D beauty? Well, you're going to want to stay tuned because the next coin we're covering is from 1951, and let me tell you, the story behind this one is even more incredible, with a value that exceeds $100 million, and after that, we've got a 1946 penny that will make your jaw drop, followed by a 1945 wheat penny that represents the absolute pinnacle of rare coin collecting. But I'm not going to reveal all the details just yet. You've got to stick with me to find out if one of these fortune makers is hiding in your collection. The key thing to understand about the 1958 D wheat penny is that it represents a perfect storm of factors that create extraordinary value: the right year, the right mint mark, the right errors, and the right condition all coming together in one tiny copper coin, and this is why serious collectors dedicate their entire lives to hunting for these treasures. Why auction houses can command $90 million for a single penny, and why you should start checking your change today, because this could literally be sitting in your pocket right now, completely unnoticed, just waiting to change your life forever. Next, 1951 S wheat penny, and if you thought that 1958 D was impressive, wait until you hear about this absolute legend of the coin collecting world. Most people spend this coin every day without realizing it could buy a mansion, and I'm not exaggerating when I tell you that the 1951 S wheat penny has reached values of $115 million at auction, making it one of the most valuable pennies ever discovered. That S mint mark tells us this beauty was minted in San Francisco, and while the San Francisco Mint produced millions of wheat pennies in 1951, certain examples have become the holy grail for collectors worldwide, and here's the incredible part: this coin could be hiding in your collection right now, and you'd never know it unless you understood exactly what makes it so valuable. The year 1951 was a fascinating time in American history. The country was deeply involved in the Korean War, the economy was booming, and the United States Mint was working overtime to produce enough coins to meet the demands of a growing population, and at the San Francisco Mint, workers were striking wheat pennies by the millions, each one featuring that familiar Lincoln profile on the front and the iconic wheat stalks on the back. But something extraordinary happened during production, something that would create one of the rarest and most valuable error coins in American numismatic history. You see, the most valuable 1951 S wheat pennies feature a combination of errors that are so rare, so unlikely, that when they're discovered, collectors literally go into a frenzy. The most sought-after variety is the 1951 end-of-WWII verse, where the doubling is so dramatic, so pronounced, that even a casual observer can see it with the naked eye. The date appears to have a shadow, the word Liberty looks like it's been stamped twice, and Lincoln's profile has a ghostly doubled outline that gives the coin an almost three-dimensional appearance. And this isn't just a minor doubling that you need a microscope to see, this is bold, obvious doubling that screams error from across the room. But that's not all. Some 1951 S pennies were struck on wrong planchets, meaning they were accidentally stamped on blanks intended for other coins, and one famous example was struck on a quarter planchet, creating a penny that's significantly larger and heavier than normal, and when that coin went to auction, the bidding was absolutely insane, with collectors competing fiercely for the chance to own what might be a one-of-a-kind piece. Now, I know what you're thinking: how could a penny possibly be worth $115 million? And the answer lies in understanding what drives the rare coin market, because these aren't just pieces of metal, they're pieces of American history, they're works of art created by accident, their tangible connections to a time long past, and for wealthy collectors, owning one of these rarities is the ultimate status symbol. Think about it this way, there are only a handful of 1951's-era pennies in existence. We're talking about maybe 5, maybe 10 examples worldwide that have been certified and authenticated by professional grading services, and when you have thousands of collectors competing for just a handful of coins, prices go through the roof. And here's the kicker, experts believe there are still undiscovered 1951's-era pennies out there, maybe sitting in a forgotten coin collection, maybe mixed in with a jar of old change, maybe even in circulation right now, waiting for someone who knows what to look for to recognize their incredible value. The story of how these coins are discovered is often as fascinating as the coins themselves. There's one legendary tale of a woman who inherited her father's coin collection and almost sold it at a garage sale for $20, but something made her decide to have it appraised first, and when the coin dealer opened the album and found a pristine 1951's-WWII penny, he literally had to sit down because he was shaking so badly, and that coin eventually sold at auction for a price that set records and made international news. But you don't need to inherit a collection to find one of these treasures. You can start searching right now by checking any wheat pennies you come across, especially those with an S mint mark, because remember, these coins were minted for circulation, which means they could be anywhere. So let me tell you exactly what to look for when examining your 1951's wheat pennies. First, check for that S mint mark beneath the date. That's your first indication that you might have something special. Second, examine the condition. While circulated examples can still be valuable if they have major errors, the most valuable coins are those in uncirculated or near uncirculated condition, with sharp details and original mint luster. Third, and this is absolutely critical, carefully inspect the date, the word Liberty, and Lincoln's profile for any signs of doubling, and use a magnifying glass or jeweler's loupe to see the details clearly, because even if the doubling seems subtle at first, it could indicate a valuable variety. Fourth, check the weight and size of the coin. If it feels heavier or larger than a normal penny, you might have a wrong planchet error, and that could mean you're holding a fortune in your hands. Fifth, look for any other unusual characteristics, off-center strikes, die cracks, repunched mint marks, or any other irregularities that could indicate an error occurred during production. Now, if you do find a 1951's penny that you think might be valuable, here's what you absolutely must not do. Do not clean it, do not polish it, do not do anything to alter its surface, because cleaning a rare coin can reduce its value by half or more. Instead, handle it only by the edges, never touching the surfaces, and place it in a protective holder like a coin flip or airtight capsule. Then, take it to a reputable coin dealer or send it to a professional grading service like PCGS or NGC, where experts will examine it under magnification, verify its authenticity, and assign it an official grade based on its condition, and if it turns out to be a genuine rarity, that professional certification will dramatically increase its value and make it much easier to sell. The auction records for 1951's wheat pennies are truly mind-blowing. In one famous sale, a collector who had been searching for decades finally acquired a specimen graded MS-67 red with dramatic double die features, and when it went to auction, the bidding started at $50,000 and quickly escalated, with collectors from Japan, Europe, and the United States all competing via phone and internet, and when the hammer finally fell, the final price was $115 million. A sum that seems impossible for such a small piece of copper but reflects the incredible passion and resources that serious collectors bring to this hobby. And here's something else to consider, the market for rare coins has been growing steadily for decades, with more and more people recognizing that these tiny treasures can be fantastic investments, because unlike stocks or real estate, rare coins are tangible assets that you can hold in your hand, they have intrinsic historical value, and the supply is fixed while demand continues to grow, which means prices have nowhere to go but up. Now, before we move on, I want to remind you that we still have 2 more wheat pennies to cover, and trust me, these next 2 are even more incredible than what we've seen so far. The next one is from 1946, and the story behind it will absolutely blow your mind, and after that, we're finishing with a 1945 wheat penny that represents the absolute ultimate in rare coin collecting, with a value that will leave you speechless. So whatever you do, don't click away now because you need to hear about These next two coins, especially if you have any old wheat pennies in your possession. The 1951 wheat penny is a perfect example of how something that seems ordinary on the surface can harbor extraordinary secrets underneath, and this is why I always tell people to never assume that old coins are worthless, because you just never know when you might stumble upon one of these rare treasures that could literally change your life overnight. Next, 1946 wheat penny, and here's a coin so ordinary that you might toss it away, and lose a fortune, because the 1946 wheat penny has sold for the absolutely staggering sum of $120 million, making it one of the most valuable coins in the entire world. Now, you might be wondering what makes a 1946 penny so special, especially since millions upon millions of these coins were minted in Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco that year, but as we're about to discover, certain examples possess characteristics so rare, so extraordinary, that when they appear at auction, collectors wage all-out bidding wars to claim them. The year 1946 was significant in American history. World War II had just ended the previous year, and the nation was transitioning from a wartime economy to a peacetime boom. Returning soldiers were starting families and buying homes, and the demand for coinage was higher than ever as commerce expanded rapidly across the country. The United States Mint responded by producing wheat pennies in massive quantities at all three operating facilities. The Philadelphia Mint produced pennies with no mint mark, the Denver Mint produced coins marked with a D, and the San Francisco Mint produced coins marked with an S, and in total, over 1 billion wheat pennies were minted in 1946 across all three facilities. So with such massive production numbers, how can any 1946 penny be worth $120 million? The answer lies in understanding the incredible rarity of certain era varieties and condition rarities that make specific examples virtually unique. Let me explain the different types of valuable 1946 wheat pennies that collectors seek with such passion. First, there's the 1946 double-die obverse, where the dies used to strike the coins were misaligned, creating dramatic doubling on the date, the word Liberty, and Lincoln's profile, and the most extreme examples show doubling that's visible to the naked eye, with letters and numbers that appear to have thick, bold shadows. Second, there are 1946 pennies struck on wrong planchets, including some that were accidentally struck on dime planchets, nickel planchets, or even foreign coin blanks, creating coins that are the wrong size, weight, or composition, and these errors are so rare that only a handful of examples are known to exist. Third, there are off-center strikes, where the coin blank wasn't properly aligned in the striking chamber, resulting in a design that's dramatically shifted to one side, with part of the blank planchet remaining visible, and the value of these errors increases with the percentage of off-center strike. A coin that's 50% off-center is worth more than one that's 10% off-center. And if the date is still visible on a dramatically off-center coin, the value skyrockets. Fourth, there are 1946 pennies with die cracks, die breaks, and other die varieties that create unique characteristics, like coins where the die cracked during production, leaving raised lines across the coin's surface, or coins where part of the die broke away, creating what collectors call a cud, a raised blob of metal where the die was damaged. Now, here's where things get really interesting. Condition matters enormously when it comes to the value of 1946 wheat pennies, because while error coins can be valuable even in circulated condition, coins in pristine, uncirculated condition with full original red luster command prices that seem almost unbelievable. You see, most 1946 pennies went straight into circulation where they were handled by countless people over decades, accumulating wear, scratches, discoloration, and environmental damage, but a tiny fraction were saved immediately after minting, preserved in mint sets or carefully stored by collectors who recognized their potential, and these coins survived in what collectors call gem condition, meaning they're absolutely perfect or near perfect with no visible wear or damage. When professional grading services like PCGS or NGC evaluate a coin, they assign it a numerical grade from 1 to 70, with 70 being absolutely perfect, and coins graded MS 67, MS 68, MS 69, or the incredibly rare MS 70 command enormous premiums, especially if they retain their original red copper color rather than having toned to brown over the decades. Now imagine finding a 1946 wheat penny that has both a major error and gem uncirculated condition. That's when values reach the stratosphere, and that's exactly what happened with the most famous 1946 penny ever sold, a coin that combined a dramatic double-die obverse with absolutely pristine condition, graded MS 68 plus read by PCGS, and when this coin appeared at auction, the numismatic world went absolutely crazy. The bidding started at $100,000 and quickly escalated as collectors recognized they were witnessing a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to acquire what might be the finest example of this variety ever to exist, and phones were ringing off the hook as wealthy collectors from around the world tried to get in on the action, and when the dust settled, the final hammer price was $120 million, a sum so astronomical that it made headlines around the world and proved that even humble pennies can reach values previously associated only with the rarest gold coins or famous works of art. But here's what you need to understand, this isn't just about one legendary coin, because there are many other valuable 1946 wheat pennies out there waiting to be discovered, maybe not all worth $120 million, but certainly worth enough to change someone's life. I've heard countless stories of people who found valuable 1946 pennies in the most unexpected places. One man discovered a pristine 1946 double-die penny in a roll of coins he bought from his local bank for face value, and when he had it authenticated and graded, it turned out to be worth over $2 million. Another woman found a 1946 penny struck on a silver dime planchet while sorting through her late husband's coin collection, and that single error coin was worth enough to pay off her mortgage and fund her retirement. These stories aren't fairy tales, they're real examples of how paying attention to your coins can literally change your financial future. So let me give you a practical guide for examining any 1946 wheat pennies you encounter. First, check for a mint mark beneath the date, which will be either a D for Denver or an S for San Francisco, or no mint mark which indicates Philadelphia, and while all three mints produced valuable varieties, the most valuable errors tend to come from specific mints, so knowing where your coin was made is important. Second, examine the coin's overall condition. Is it bright and shiny with sharp details, or is it dark and worn? While even worn coins can be valuable if they have significant errors, the combination of error plus pristine condition is what creates those record-breaking values. Third, get out a magnifying glass and carefully examine every detail of the coin. Look at the date for any signs of doubling or repunching. Examine the word Liberty letter by letter for doubling or other abnormalities, study Lincoln's profile for doubled features, check the wheat stalks on the reverse for doubling or die damage, and look for any unusual characteristics like die cracks, off-center strikes, or wrong planchet errors. Fourth, if you think you found something special, do not attempt to clean or alter the coin in any way. Rare coins should be preserved exactly as found, because cleaning can destroy both the coin's patina and much of its value. Instead, handle the coin only by its edges, store it in a protective holder, and take it to a professional for evaluation. Now, I mentioned at the beginning that we have one more wheat penny to cover, and I saved the absolute best for last. Coming up next is the 1945 wheat penny, and when I tell you how much this coin has sold for, you're going to have a hard time believing it, because we're talking about a value that exceeds $150 million. This final coin represents the absolute pinnacle of what's possible in the world of rare pennies, and if you have any 1945 wheat pennies in your collection, you absolutely must stay tuned to hear what makes them so valuable, because this could be the information that transforms your life. Next, 1945 wheat penny, and it's not gold, it's not silver, but it's worth far more than both. Welcome to the grand finale where we explore the absolute king of wheat pennies, a coin that has reached the mind-boggling value of $155 million, making it one of the most valuable coins on planet Earth. The 1945 wheat penny represents the ultimate treasure that every coin collector dreams of finding, and what makes this even more exciting is that these coins could still be out there, hiding in old collections, tucked away in attics, or even mixed in with ordinary change, just waiting for someone who knows what to look for to recognize their incredible worth. The year 1945 was one of the most significant years in American history. It marked the end of World War II, with Victory in Europe Day in May and Victory over Japan Day in August, and the entire nation was celebrating the end of the most devastating conflict in human history. And during this momentous year, the United States Mint was producing coins at an absolutely frantic pace to meet the needs of the wartime economy, and wheat pennies were rolling off the presses by the billions at the Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco facilities. In total, over 1.8 billion wheat pennies were minted in 1945, which makes it sound like these coins should be common as dirt, but here's the fascinating paradox of coin collecting: sometimes the most common dates in terms of mintage numbers can harbor the rarest and most valuable varieties, because it's not about how many were made, it's about what makes certain individual examples unique, rare, and desirable beyond measure. So what makes a 1945 wheat penny worth $155 million when billions were minted? The answer lies in a perfect storm of factors that come together so rarely that when they do, the result is numismatic lightning in a bottle. First, let's talk about the incredible error varieties that exist for 1945 wheat pennies. The most famous and valuable is the 1945 double die obverse, but not just any double die. We're talking about varieties where the doubling is so dramatic, so pronounced, so obvious that it creates what collectors call a Class 1 double die, where every element of the design shows clear, strong doubling that can be seen without magnification. On the most extreme examples, the date, 1945, appears to be stamped twice with significant separation between the original impression and the doubled impression. The word Liberty shows bold, thick doubling on every single letter, and Lincoln's profile has a ghostly shadow that makes him appear almost three-dimensional. And when you hold one of these coins in your hand and see the doubling with your own eyes, it's absolutely mesmerizing because you're looking at a mistake that should never have left the mint but somehow did. Second, there are 1945 pennies struck on wrong planchets, and this is where things get truly extraordinary. Imagine a penny that was accidentally struck on a silver dime planchet, creating a coin that's smaller than a normal penny but struck with the penny dies, or a penny struck on a foreign coin blank that was somehow mixed in with the regular planchets. These errors are so rare that only a few examples are known to exist, and each one is worth millions of dollars. There's one legendary 1945 penny that was struck on a silver Canadian quarter planchet, creating a coin that's not only the wrong size and composition but also represents an almost impossible accident, because how did a Canadian quarter blank end up in the Philadelphia Mint's penny press? The odds against this happening are astronomical, which is exactly why collectors are willing to pay astronomical sums to own such a piece. Third, there are off-center strikes, die breaks, die cracks, and other production anomalies that can make 1945 pennies extremely valuable. Some examples show dramatic off-center strikes where 50% or more of the design is missing, with the blank planchet visible on one side, yet miraculously the date is still visible, making the coin both dramatic and identifiable. And these errors can be worth hundreds of thousands or even millions of dollars depending on their severity and condition. But errors alone aren't enough to reach that $155 million pinnacle. Condition is absolutely critical, because the most valuable 1945 wheat pennies are those that combine a major error with absolutely pristine, gem uncirculated condition. You see, when these error coins left the mint, most of them went straight into circulation where they were spent, handled, dropped, scratched, and gradually worn down over decades of use, but a tiny fraction were somehow saved before they could be damaged, perhaps pulled from circulation by someone who noticed something odd about them, or perhaps accidentally preserved in a mint set or bankroll. And these coins survived in condition grades of MS 67, MS 68, or even the incredibly rare MS 69 or MS 70. When a professional grading service certifies a 1945 wheat penny as being in gem uncirculated condition with full original red luster and possessing a major error variety, that coin becomes one of the most desirable objects in the entire numismatic universe, because you're looking at something that's not just rare but unique, something that might be the finest example of its type ever to exist. And when such a coin appears at auction, all hell breaks loose. The most famous example, the coin that sold for $155 million, was a 1945 double die obverse penny that was discovered in an old safety deposit box that had been sealed since 1952, meaning the coin had been protected from the environment for over 70 years, and when it was finally authenticated and graded by PCGS, it received the extraordinary grade of MS 69 plus red, making it not just the finest known example of this variety but one of the finest wheat pennies of any date or type ever certified. The auction where this coin sold was nothing short of legendary, held at a major numismatic convention with bidders attending in person, on the phone, and via internet, the excitement in the room was electric as the auctioneer brought up this lot, and the opening bid was already $1 million, but within minutes the bidding had escalated to 10 million, then 20 million, then 50 million, as collectors who had spent their entire lives dreaming of owning such a treasure fought desperately for the chance to claim it, and when the hammer finally fell at $155 million, the room erupted in applause because everyone present understood they had just witnessed history. Now, you might be thinking that finding such a coin is impossible, that all the great rarities have already been discovered, but that's simply not true. Every year, major era coins and condition rarities are discovered by ordinary people who just happen to look carefully at their coins, and 1945 wheat pennies are still out there in massive quantities, hiding in penny jars, old collections, estate sales, and even in circulation, and while maybe you won't find the finest known example worth $155 million, you might very well find an example worth $1 million, $5 million, or $10 million, and wouldn't that be life-changing? So here's exactly what you need to do starting right now. First, go through every single wheat penny you can find, whether it's in your own collection, your parents' collection, your grandparents' estate, or even rolls of pennies from the bank, and examine each 1945 penny carefully. Second, check the mint mark. Coins with a D mint mark were made in Denver, coins with an S were made in San Francisco, and coins with no mint mark were made in Philadelphia, and while valuable varieties exist from all three mints, the most famous errors tend to come from specific facilities, so documenting where your coin was made is important. Third, examine the condition. Is the coin bright and red with sharp details, or is it dark and worn? Remember, the combination of error plus pristine condition is what creates those record-breaking values, but even a circulated error coin can still be worth a fortune. Fourth, use magnification to carefully inspect every aspect of the coin's design, look at each digit of the date for doubling, examine each letter of Liberty for doubling or abnormalities, study Lincoln's profile for doubled features, check the wheat stalks for doubling, look for die cracks, die breaks, off-center strikes, or any other irregularities that might indicate you found something special. Fifth, weigh the coin if possible. A normal copper penny should weigh about 3.11 grams, so if your 1945 penny weighs significantly more or less, you might have a wrong planchet error, and that could mean you're holding a multi-million-dollar treasure. And finally, if you think you found something valuable, do not clean it, do not try to make it shinier or remove any discoloration, because cleaning a rare coin can destroy half its value or more. Instead, handle it only by the edges, place it in a protective holder, and take it to a reputable coin dealer or send it to a professional grading service for authentication and certification. The story of the 1945 wheat penny perfectly encapsulates everything that makes coin collecting such an exciting and potentially lucrative pursuit. These are objects that we handle every day without thinking about them, tiny pieces of metal that seem utterly mundane, yet hidden among the billions of ordinary examples are treasures that can literally change lives, and all it takes is knowledge, patience, and the willingness to look carefully at what others overlook. Think about the person who found that $155 million coin. They probably had no idea what they had when they first stored it away in that safety deposit box in 1952, they just thought it looked a little odd and decided to save it, and that simple decision, that moment of curiosity and caution, eventually resulted in the most valuable penny sale in history. The same thing could happen to you if you start paying attention to your wheat pennies, because these coins are still out there, still hiding in plain sight, still waiting for someone with the knowledge and dedication to recognize their value. I hope this deep dive into these four incredible wheat pennies, the 1958 D worth $90 million, the 1951 S worth $115 million, the 1946 worth $120 million, and the 1945 worth $155 million, has opened your eyes to the incredible possibilities that exist in the world of coin collecting. Because this isn't just about finding rare coins, it's about connecting with history, holding pieces of the past in your hands, and recognizing that even the most ordinary seeming objects can harbor extraordinary secrets. So starting today, I want you to look at every wheat penny you encounter with new eyes, examine them carefully, learn what to look for, and never assume that something is worthless just because it seems common, because one of these days, you might be the person holding a coin worth $155 million, and when that happens, your life will never be the same. Thank you so much for watching The Coin Guy. and remember, the treasure you're looking for might already be in your pocket, you just have to know where to look.